Hello fellow whiskey students, this is Mark from WhiskyWhistle bringing you whiskey review number 48. Today we're going to be looking at Glenfiddich. Now this is the second Glenfiddich that's appeared on WhiskyWhistle. The first was the 15-year-old, and I believe that was review number 5. You'll see a picture of it rolling through. We'll talk about that in a little while. Anyway, welcome, and if this is your first time, or whether you're a returning subscriber, thanks so much for tuning in. So let's get right into the pouring. We'll get right into that quickly, and we'll let that sit for a little while because it's always good to let your whiskey breathe a little bit beforehand. And there we are. So Glenfiddich 15-year-old, the unique Solera Reserve. Okay. Nice to see an adjective put into the name of a particular expression. We'll pour that into my Glenfiddich Glencairn glass. I got that at a Glenfiddich whiskey tasting here in Seoul. There's also a picture of that rolling through as well, and you'll see the Glenfiddich ambassador for South Korea, in fact. So let's pour that. And that's pretty good, a little more than 30 milliliters, I think. Enough for the review and a little bit more. Okay, very quiet cork, eh? Not much sound to that one. That's a composite cork. Probably does a better job of actually stopping the whiskey, and likely doesn't break as much as a whole piece of a cork. So we'll set that back there. This particular bottle I did buy in Korea, and it's readily, it's readily available. In fact, I happened to find it at Costco here. This was just before Lunar New Year, and they had a fantastic set, including the glass as well as the bottle. A different glass, in fact, and also an on the rocks glass, or a rocks glass, or old-fashioned glass, or whatever you'd like to call that. I thought I had that nearby. Over there. Well, we'll leave it over there. It's a wonderfully bulbous shape, and perfect, I think, for a nice old-fashioned made with perhaps Glenfiddich 15-year-old. Okay. Now, this is called the Solera Reserve. And for many of you watching, you may be wondering what's with the word Solera, and why reserve. We'll talk about that. Solera. This is a sherry making method that's used in Spain, and when they're making the sherry, one method, they can put an age statement just like any other aged spirit. Or they can do something a little bit different, and they can take this year's sherry, and then next year they add the next year's sherry, and they take a certain amount of that out, and then 2017 they'll add that year's sherry and take a certain amount out, always leaving a reserve in that particular oak cask. And this would be a very, well, it's more like a vat, in fact. So it's not closed, or it's not closed completely. There's a way for the newer liquid to get in there. So anyway, in that vat, the new ones, the old ones, all get mixed together, and then a certain amount is removed, meanwhile leaving the remainder in there. So when you think about that, if the sherry bodega has been making a Solera vatting of their sherry for 50 years, then you will always have some remnant of that original 50-year-old sherry from a long ago. So it creates a continuance, so there's a continuation, so there should be some similarity from year to year. However, if you could have a glass of each from each year of that Solera vat, you would probably find there would be a general aging and a general increase in complexity that's going on. So Glenfiddich decided to do this with their own whiskey. And what they're doing is they put an age statement on there that's 15 years old. So 15 years old is the youngest whiskey that goes into that vat, the Solera vat. And what they say from the Glenfiddich website and from other sources is that they only ever remove half of what's in the vat. So in comes the new 15-year-old, and they allow it to mix and meld and roll over each other, and there's a reaction between older whiskeys and newer whiskeys and the wood that is from which the vat is made. And then they remove half of that whiskey that's in the vat and bottle it, and there we have it. This, by the way, I should have mentioned, is 40% ABV, and this is a 700 milliliter or 70 centiliter bottle. And this is what you would find pretty much world over. I got the information from the US website, so it looks like even in the US they're selling the 700 milliliter as opposed to the 750. Not that that's that important. But anyway, 40% ABV. And as one would guess, big company, Glenfiddich, probably ranked second in the world in terms of volume of sales of single malts. I won't mention number one. In fact, Glenfiddich had been number one up until recently, I do believe. And I'm sure they may regain number one, especially with very strong, delicious products such as this one. So who knows? Or perhaps there could be a new number one in the near future. Anyway, what was I saying? So 40% ABV. This is the minimum standard for the industry, and likely chill filtered, possibly, but possibly not, colored to some degree. And perhaps if you are from one of the other European countries like Germany, for instance, you may know exactly whether there is color in there or not, because it'll say so on your labels. Not in Korea, unfortunately. And, again, I apologize for my voice. I really had not really a bad cold, but boy, it sure left a long-lasting sort of a congestion going on there. I should probably see somebody about that. It's been a little too long, although it seems to be working its way out. So hopefully, hopefully I'll have a nice, clear, smooth voice again the next time. Today, by the way, this is March 9th. March 9th? Yes, it is. It's March 9th. And it's 2016. Happens to be Wednesday, and as many refer to it, it's Whiskey Wednesday. So I'm happy to be recording this here on Whiskey Wednesday, March the 9th. And in fact, it's 2 days after my 41st birthday. Just aged myself. That's okay. Like whiskeys and wines, I think generally speaking, people get better with age. Possibly not better looking, but anyway, smarter, wiser, maybe more interesting, maybe not, who knows. So why don't we start smelling that one? Did we finish talking about Solera vat? Well, one last thing before I start the nosing, smelling the fragrance of this whiskey. So 1998 is when Glenfiddich began with their Solera vat. So let's imagine this for a minute. 1998, they build their Solera vat. It's made of oak, and what do they put in there? They put in 15-year-old Glenfiddich whiskey, and in fact, they're putting in sherry matured. European oak sherry matured whiskey. They're putting in ex-bourbon oak matured whiskey. ex-bourbon, ex-sherry European oak, ex-bourbon American oak, as well as new oak matured whiskey. All of 15 years or more is going into this big Solera vat. I should have found out how big it was. I'm guessing it's probably on the order of thousands of liters. Yeah, because it wouldn't make sense for it to be any smaller than that. So 1998, they start putting in the whiskey. And when they're ready to bottle, they take out half. Then they fill it up with more, and so on. And the process is repeated over and over and over again. And that has now been 18 years. So 18 years, there has been whiskey left in that Solera vat. Some of it dating all the way back to 1998. So 1998, 15 years, plus 18 years, so 15 and 18 is 33. So in fact, although they cannot actually say it, some of the whiskey that is bottled even today is as old as 33 years old. And it's true because it's been continuously aged in that Solera vat. And if you're aware of the process of taking something, removing half, adding more, removing half, and so on, over repeated period of time and repeated processes, repeated iterations of this action, yes, of course, the original content will reduce, but it never goes to zero, does it? And this is something that you can test for yourself. Take some black coffee, take out half, put half water in there, and find out how many times you go through that until you end up with practically clear or absolutely clear water. And I tell you, it will be a very long time. Okay, time to smell and taste this wonderful whiskey. Before I smell the whiskey, there is going to be a very short advertisement, and that will come right about now. Okay, welcome back. Let's get into the nosing, shall we? And you know, it's not even really close to my nose, and I can already smell the fragrance coming from the glass. It's quite potent. It's very spicy. And you're going to get some cinnamon. Wonderfully strong cinnamon. As well as, and again, something that I often refer to as a freshness. And I believe that's sort of a spiciness that comes largely from the cask. And there's something like apples, fresh apples going on in there as well. It's quite lovely to smell. And this is also something that if you were to take a little bit of the whiskey, well, why don't we do that? Make sure my hands are clean, which they are. Take just a drop of the whiskey and drop that on your palm. Not too much, don't want to waste it. Okay, that's enough. And rub your hands together and smell that. And you really smell, well, a lot of that the oakiness, and some of the vanilla, and even the cinnamon really comes through. So try that. Obviously, you know, don't go overboard with splashing that on your hands, but quite interesting, and it really lasts a long time. Anyway, so back to back to the glass. What I find with this one too, the longer you wait, the more rewards you'll find in terms of the fragrance, the smell, the nose of this whiskey. Now, what had I written down in my notes? I wrote cinnamon apples, bitter orange, which, again, you may have to wait a little while for that and let it roll around in the glass. And then there's a waxy leatheriness that starts to come through after, say, around 10 minutes, which is about the time that may have elapsed by now. And waiting even longer, which I won't do, I found more vanilla coming through, some kind of a cherry vanilla, and arrowroot biscuits. So try it yourself. Pour yourself a glass and cover it and wait 30 minutes. Pour another glass and compare the newly poured glass together with the 30 minutes ago, the glass poured 30 minutes ago. Sorry, living here in South Korea, sometimes I end up losing a little bit of my English. It's quite funny. Okay. All right. So cinnamon apples, bitter orange, some waxy leatheriness, and with time, more vanilla, stronger vanilla, a cherry note, and a biscuity note, something like arrowroot biscuits. Okay, well, we will taste that now, and well, I wonder whose idea the Solera vat was, the Solera Reserve. Whosever idea it was ingenious. This may almost match the 12-year-old in terms of sales, I wonder. I would guess it's probably very close. And price-wise, not much more, I would say. Okay, anyway, cheers everybody. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. It's quite full-flavored for 40% ABV. And it really begins sweet. And then it moves into some bitterness, in a good way, of course. And then it develops a little bit sour. So that's a really nice, interesting progression of flavors. And I think a lot of that delicate bitterness is coming from the European oak that's being used. I find that the bourbon oak cask, ex-bourbon cask aged whiskeys tend not to have as much bitterness and a little bit more sweetness with some sour balance. Anyway, and what other flavors am I getting in here? There's a lot of fruit going on there. And, well, I wrote here cranberry sauce, specifically Ocean Spray cranberry sauce. And there's a light leather note there, and then an orange almond melding. So not really just orange, not really just almond, but, you know, mixed together. Maybe like a salad, some sort of a salad dressing with orange and almond, and raw almond, not really grilled, not a toasted nut flavor, but the raw flavor. Very nice mouthfeel as well. And the finish, in fact, some of the leathery tones carry through into the finish, along with cinnamon and some general dryness. And you may be treated with a little bit of mint, as well as some lemongrass. And I think there's one other thing that I wrote down earlier. What was it? Oh yeah. Yeah. Keep smacking your lips, trying to feel, get a sense of what you're tasting long after you've swallowed. And I'm getting Thrills gum. I'm not sure which countries are familiar with Thrills gum. It may only be Canada, but Thrills gum is something that I ate a lot of when I was a young kid, especially elementary school and middle school, junior high, we call it in Canada. And came in a yellow package, had Thrills written in cursive, black cursive on the front, and it was kind of like Chiclets gum, so a little square, candy shell coated gum, and purple in fact. And I think the flavor was kind of a lilac, like a lilac-y flavored gum in fact, and tasted a bit like soap, but in a really, really good way. Everybody loved Thrills. Anyway, so I'm left with a little bit of a thrilling flavor, something not unlike Thrills gum. Okay, time to add a little bit of water. Well, we'll go with about, and I just realized this is not 5 milliliters. In fact, it looks as though this is a third of 5 milliliters, somewhere between half and a third. And I found a European measuring, some measuring spoons, 15 milliliters, 5 milliliters, 1 milliliter. And it takes 2.5 of these to fill a 5 milliliter spoon. So there you have it. So that's, well, if it's half, it's 2.5. And if it's a third, then it's, what is that, 1.67. So anyway, what do you know? Okay, so we're going to add a good, hopefully a couple milliliters in there. You don't need much in there. Again, it's 40%. You could probably go down, take it down to into the low 30s. And since it's got quite a strong flavor, you'll be fine. But I think since it really does drink so well at 40%, I don't think you really needed to dilute it that much. And remember, the point of dilution is not because we find the whiskey too strongly flavored, but rather because we want to enact some chemical reactions that go on. And there's been some interesting articles about the reactions that happen in whiskey when water is added. If I can find said article, I'm going to put a link to that on this video, okay? Okay, so you want to let that roll around a bit and mix up, and it looks as though it has. I don't see any little squigglies in there of the two different liquids with different viscosities mixing up. Okay. And what I find with water, you get a lot more vanilla and sweet fruity notes. And that leathery note is still there, in fact. Anything I've forgotten? Right, and actually more biscuity as well. Quite nice. Okay, and there will be another advertisement that'll be coming to you right now. Okay, thanks for coming back. So we're going to taste that with water. I've added roughly about 2 milliliters. Let's see how that works. And I'm guessing that was roughly a little less than 30 milliliters that I added it to. You get a little bit of a higher sweet note, and it seems to bypass a bit of the bitterness. So if you're not into bitter flavors, adding a bit of water will really make this sing for you. Anything different? Well, not really. I've written here fruit basket with some raw nuts and a few fruit pits or stones added in. In other words, a little bit of dryness that comes through. So not that much different from the neat flavors. I'm not getting specifically orange anymore. So just a generic fruit. But anyway, quite nice. I probably prefer the taste, the palate. Prefer it neat. However, you know, when I'm having myself a glass of whiskey before bed or in the evening, generally speaking, I will almost always have half the glass neat, and then add a tiny drop of water or two, and drink the rest with water. Almost all the time. And the reason being, it's just interesting. It's interesting to see how the taste changes, and you know, whether I prefer it with water or not. I really do enjoy the experience of finding something that changes either remarkably, or that changes in a subtle way, or that changes from you know, a bittersweet flavor to sweet and sour flavor, or vice versa. So that's my general habit. Yours may be different. You may prefer to have your whiskey neat only, and you know, that's fine. To each their own, right? Others may find themselves always adding a little bit of water, and still others may add some ice, a few ice cubes, or one big, you know, ball of ice added in as well. There's all kinds of ways to enjoy your whiskey, and all are completely great ways to drink what you love. So there's no right way to drink whiskey, but I think everybody, whether you like it on ice, or whether you like it with green tea or lemonade or tonic water or cola. I wouldn't suggest cola is maybe not the best thing, but maybe that's what you like. But I would say, you know, try it neat first. You might just find it quite refreshing to drink it in such a concentrated form. So anyway, cheers to everybody. And Oh, there's the ambassador for Korea from Glenfiddich. And there's me. What am I doing? I am tasting and reviewing Glenfiddich 15-year-old Distillery Edition, and I was comparing two glasses showing the Scotch mist that grows in the glass that has a bit of water added. Quite a remarkable difference with the Distillery Edition. And if you are traveling from one country to the next, and you see a bottle of Glenfiddich Distillery Edition, which in fact is also 15 years old, I would suggest getting yourself a bottle, and also a bottle of the Solera Reserve, which I think pretty much everybody who likes Scotch whiskey will enjoy. Okay, so the WhiskyWhistle whiskey scorer for Glenfiddich Unique Solera Reserve 15-year-old is 84 out of 100. And I write a nice upgrade from the 12-year-old. Every year, as they say, should be different from the year before. So really, if someone really likes the 15-year-old, I think year by year you will find some differences, and might be interesting to try and hang on to a bottle from one year and then buy a new bottle and compare them. So give that a try. And what I write here is quality casks have been used, very good spirit, and most of all, a very great value. This bottle at a 15-year-old can be had for not much money, no matter where you are, whether you're in Canada, especially if you're in the USA, if you're in England or Europe. You're not going to spend a whole lot of money to get a bottle of Solera Reserve. So 84 out of 100, that's the WhiskyWhistle whiskey score for Glenfiddich Solera Reserve. Unique Solera Reserve, and unique it was. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please do subscribe if you've enjoyed what you watched. You can click the link down there below, and hopefully I'll see you again next time. Thank you.